everyone, and welcome to the Double Show. Thanks, of course, to NAB. We have a massive week of semi-finals coming your way. Saturday is going to be an absolute treat. So much to unpack on today's show. And, of course, as always, I'm joined by award-winning journalist Sarah Black. Sarah, welcome to you. Cannot wait for Saturday.
No, cannot wait for Saturday. I'm still recovering from the weekend. It was highly stressful matches, but super enjoyable.
Yep, and even more enjoyable for us here on the W Show is the fact that Collingwood co-captain Bree Davey is back in studio with us. Bree, welcome to you. It's good to see you.
Thank you, Nat. I'm glad to be on.
And your Pies into a semi.
Yes, so excited. Obviously, stress stations like I said over the weekend, but we got there in the end. So, yeah, pumped for this weekend.
Yeah, well, we will talk about that game and more, of course, in a moment. But it's time to check in and see what has been making news this week. Thanks, of course, to NAB. And the big talking point that everyone was talking about on Monday night was, of course, that Trent Cooper has been sacked as Fremantle coach. The club has parted ways after 5 seasons at the helm. We've got the All-Australian squad, which came out as well. We'll talk about that a little bit later on in the show. But we should talk, Sarah, about Trent Cooper, because when that news dropped on Monday night, that came as a real shock to me. Did it come as a shock to you too?
It really did, Nat. This was 10 p.m. Melbourne time. Obviously, Perth are 3 hours behind, but it was, that was quite astonishing. Monday night surprise there. He's been so good for this Fremantle program. He really took the reins at a crucial time and got them into a powerhouse. 2020 will always be a question of what could have been. They were the premiership favourites that season. But considering the circumstances of the past year, the 2 seasons in total, the hubs and all the injuries, I thought that it was a bit rough and he possibly could have been given just like another year to see how things could have shaken out.
Yeah, so they had just the 3 wins in a draw as well in this season. But as you mentioned, the injuries, and Bree, we take a look here. This is the player unavailability. I mean, it's just a huge injury list. It must be so difficult for coaches, but also players to kind of gel together when you've got these players missing.
Yeah, it looks so tough. And even looking at that list, you've got some real experience there. Obviously, Cara, Ebony Antonio, Gabby O'Sullivan, players like that who have played a lot of games, and it's not just about their playing ability, it's what they can actually bring to direct and sort of get the team going on the field. So it's hard when there's so many injuries, and Freo have been really unlucky, and it's sad to see Trent go. I think he looks like he's really well respected and respected across the league as well.
And what that graphic doesn't show, Nat, is the impact of Kiara Bowers and Hayley Miller having severely delayed pre-seasons. Hayley didn't train at all with that calf issue. Kiara was struck down by COVID. Her entire family was.
She had like 4 weeks in lockdown,
Yeah,
apparently.
She couldn't get out of the house to train. And they're already still having to structurally cover for the loss of Gemma Houghton and Steph Kane. So this was a completely different Fremantle outfit that we saw this year. And we saw as the players started filtering back, they looked a lot better. So I think maybe the Dockers are looking for someone who can help take them another step forward, but I'm surprised that they made this move so early.
Yeah, perhaps it warranted just another season at the helm just to see what he could do without the injuries that they've had, and then maybe make a call on it after that. But that is the decision the Fremantle Dockers have made, and we wish Trent Cooper as well all the best. He's certainly been a big supporter of all of your work, Sarah, on women's.afl, and of course the Credit to the Girls podcast as well. But let's get into the finals chat, because semi-finals on Saturday, this is what it looks like. Hopefully you get to go down to watch some games in person, but if you can't, you're going to be glued to your couch, because this is what we've got coming. And we probably should start with the Pies. Your Pies, Bree. Just talk me through, what is the feeling of the group and the vibe? We love a vibe here on the W Show, heading into, this massive semi-final clash. It's do or die, but you're facing the Crows.
Yeah, look, I think we're just really excited. I think this is the part of the year you want to be playing footy, in particular, as the finals end. And I think we're just going to go out there and just give it an absolute crack. And I think we can really challenge the Crows. Earlier in the season, we went really close, and I think in the last few minutes missed a couple of scoring opportunities that could have got us over and actually beaten them. So, yeah, I think we can challenge them. We're excited and just ready to put our foot down and work hard on the weekend.
So you mentioned that last clash, which came in round 4 earlier this season. The Pies have actually lost the last 3 against the Crows over the last 3 seasons. But what lessons did Collingwood learn? Well, this was the coach, Steve Simons.
Well, the first half, the Crows were all over us in that first half. We played way too slow. We've been a bit of a funny team with our ball movement. Early stage of the season, we played a little bit too slow. Then we had a few weeks where we played too fast, and I feel against Brisbane, we did some right things, but one thing we did take away, we tried to play too fast against them. Brisbane already played at high speed, and we tried to go even faster, and we weren't capable of executing our skills and decisions at that speed. So we wound it back a little bit today, and we think now that hopefully the learnings that we've got from going too slow, too fast, that against Adelaide next week, hopefully we get the balance right.
So how do you get the balance right?
Yeah, look, it's a tough one. I think in women's footy, like particularly at Collingwood, we are so literal, which is a great thing because the coach tells you to do something and we go and do it. So it's great. But I think when one message comes out, we do it and then we sort of forget about the other part of the message. So I think when we get told to play fast, we play fast and we don't slow it down. And then when we're told to play slow, we sort of tend to go the opposite. So I think it's just about getting that experience through having to make decisions in games. And again, that'll only come with playing more games and things like that. So yeah, the balance, obviously, you're just assessing and can we go quick here? No, so hold it up. Or can we go fast here? Yes, we can, so go.
And another thing, Bree, that Steve mentioned in that presser was, late in the game against the Bulldogs, that he felt you girls really went into your shells and the Dogs were just full out attack. They had nothing to lose. Is that something that you're going to have to really counter this week against, the might of Adelaide?
Yeah, definitely. And I think it is that thing of, obviously towards the end of the game, the Dogs' message would have been go absolute attack on these guys. So we did speak about that at three-quarter time. We knew they were going to come at us, and they did, and they did really well. But I think, again, there was a couple of little decisions we had made late in the game that sort of put us under the pump. So I think we've spoken about it already this week, and going into Adelaide, if we're put into certain positions again, we'll know what decisions to make, hopefully, this time.
I guess most people and most fans and so-called experts like Sarah and myself, more like Sarah, would probably have the Crows winning this one. Does the underdog tag suit you guys, do you think?
I really do think it does. I think, obviously, coming from the first few seasons, and we're reflecting back a little bit now, but Collingwood wasn't a very strong team and weren't doing too well. And I think going through those years where we sort of started to build, we did have that underdog tag, and I think it really drove us. So I think there will be no exception this week, and I think going in and being an underdog doesn't bother us. I think, if anything, it spurs us on. So, yeah, bring it on, I say, and hopefully, like I said, we can get on top.
Ooh, so juicy. I can't wait for this. There are a couple of injury concerns, though, for Collingwood in Sarah Rowe and Ruby Schleicher, both so important to the Pies side, both carrying sort of a knee injury at the moment. We caught up with Sarah Rowe and asked her about her injury on Tuesday. She says she's absolutely fine to go, but what about her housemate in Ruby?
Yeah, she's looking good as well. I think it's the same thing. You just have to get through the week of training. Most of us pull up sore after games, and it's kind of hard to know if they're impact injuries or if they're actual injuries. So I think Ruby will just have to get through the week as well. But yeah, she's definitely feeling hopeful. I think that's the way it happens with us. I was like, this is typical, the two of us on the sideline. I was like, what? Do we have to do absolutely everything together? Yeah, it turns out so. So even injuries, everything, we do it all together.
Those two are inseparable, aren't they?
They are. They're obsessed. It's weird.
It's weird, but we're also obsessed with them as well, especially following them on social media. Hey, Sarah, I want to talk about Adelaide's first quarter against the Demons on Friday night last week, because their pressure was immense. They came out and they kicked the first 3 goals of that game against the D's, but then the D's turned it around from there for the next 3 quarters. What can the Pies draw on, do you think, from this game and the way that Adelaide started and then the way that Melbourne, I guess, took over?
Yeah, so the Crows came out firing. They were on from the get-go. So I think that's something, first and foremost, Collingwood will have to be wary of. They're a really seasoned final side. They're not going to, they're not going to panic under pressure.
Yeah.
One thing Melbourne did was they made a few structural changes at quarter time. They put a bit more speed behind the ball, and that was where a lot of their drive came from. Half-back, wing, and the Pies do have those sort of players. Geordie Allen, Joe Lynn, we saw late in the game, was absolutely crucial, and they were able to get the ball in quickly, so Adelaide's defence weren't able to structure up and really provide that rebound that we know them so well for. So there's a few things that Collingwood can draw on. But Adelaide, as I said, they're so seasoned, and I don't think we're going to be seeing another quiet game from Ebony Marinoff and Anne Hatchard as we did against Melbourne.
And we know Eb was carrying that sort of ankle injury as well. She came off at one point and had that strap. So fingers crossed she's 100%
not on their
right.
injury list.
Oh,
but
and neither is Chelsea Randall,
Neither
I believe.
is Chelsea Randall, but, might take that with a bit of a grain of salt at this point of the season.
Interesting. All right. Well, the other game, of course, is Richmond and North Melbourne at Punt Road Oval. It is a sellout. The 2,000 tickets were snapped up in about 13 minutes when they went on sale on Monday afternoon. There has been plenty of discussion and commentary about this one, Sarah and Bree, because the game is not going to be moved. It is going to stay at Punt Road Oval. And fans, it's fair to say, are unhappy on a couple of fronts. The first one being the limited capacity at the venue itself, and the second one being that there is a Matildas game on at the same time, which is going to clash as well and maybe pull a few fans or make fans either way choose between attending a W final and, of course, the Matildas game. I want to set this up before we talk about this in further detail. So this is Richmond's CEO in Brendan Gale and the statement that the Tigers released during the week. And I guess it's fair enough, isn't it, Sarah, that they were the team that earned the right to play a home final, so they get to play there.
For sure, that's what happened when you finish top four. That draw is becoming more and more crucial as the season progresses. But the Tigers have played the majority of all their home games this season at Punt Road. They have played home games at Icon Park in the past.
Yep.
Early in the AFLW.
And so the AFL similarly has released a statement saying they weren't going to intervene and overrule Richmond in this situation. They take into consideration a number of different factors, as you can see there, including the home team venue preference, day breaks for the clubs, timings for fans, and that's why they wanted to have these two games back-to-back as well. And unfortunately, the light situation at both Unley Oval and Punt Road Oval isn't good enough for broadcast either, so it had to be during the game. As you expect, North Melbourne coach Darren Crocker has also weighed into the debate.
All I'm disappointed about is that the game obviously got sold out in 13 minutes, and there's going to be a lot of not just North Melbourne supporters, a lot of our fans, but I'd imagine Tigers supporters as well, which would be pretty disappointed that they can't come along and support their teams. And I just feel that if we're looking to grow a product like AFLW, that this is the time potentially to be able to open it up and play it at a bigger venue.
I want to get your thoughts now, Bree. Your thoughts? Do you think it should have been moved?
Yeah, look, in short answer, yes, I do. I think I saw Emma Carney do a presser or an interview, and what she said was literally what I thought as well, that you can understand why a team would want that sort of home ground advantage, and if they've earned the right to have it, you can understand why they want it. However, again, we sort of have a responsibility, I think, as well as a league and as players to try and grow the game. And 2,000 people, I don't think quite cuts it at a final. So for me, I would be wanting to move it. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, I understand Richmond's reasoning. I don't agree with it. I feel like I saw it described as a myopic decision, which I think is the perfect word for it. It feels a little bit narrow-minded. We know Richmond is such a big club in terms of the AFL men's landscape, and now that the girls are coming on in terms of their development, I've noticed quite a few of the men's fans coming on board and getting involved in watching the girls and wanting to support them. I don't think any of the fans would have had any qualms if this was moved to Icon Park, and I feel like that was probably the better option in terms of the club as a whole.
Well, 2 weeks ago at the draw that these two sides had in round 10, there were 3,000 fans at Arden Street, so arguably there would be more that would actually want to attend this game. And it's not exactly a home ground advantage, is it, though, for the Tigers, just on that?
No, it's not. It's a bit curious. The Tigers don't have the best record at Punt Road. Some of that's to do with the fact that they were a struggling side to begin with.
Yep.
But North Melbourne have won every single game between these two clubs that have been played at Punt Road, and every game that North has hosted at Punt Road, they've also won.
I wonder if they'll use that as a little bit of motivation. From my point of view, I definitely think it should have been moved. And when I look at what's happened in the AFL and the men's competition as well, a precedent's been set where the AFL hasn't allowed Geelong and their men's team to play finals at GMHBA Stadium. We saw Travis Auld back in 2019 talk about the fact that they want to prioritise and focus on fan access and attendance to games. So my first thought was, well, if this applies here, how is it not applied, Sarah, in the AFLW?
The irony is that Richmond have been the beneficiary of that decision there in a couple of finals against Geelong. They've been able to play at the MCG. But we understand, we've been told that in terms of the men's finals, the AFL delivers the match for all finals, whereas the women's, the people who are in charge of delivering the match are the clubs for weeks 1 to 3, and then the AFL takes over for the grand final. So it's not exactly a like for like when you're looking at that Geelong decision there. But yeah, I still feel like this game is better served on a bigger stage.
All right, well, let's talk about the actual game, because that's what we're here to do, and it's going to be an absolute cracker. I cannot wait for it, because as I mentioned, it was a draw 2 weeks ago when these two sides went head to head, and last time the Tigers put so much time and effort into stopping Jazz Garner, and why wouldn't you, because she's an absolute star of the game. But Sarah, it was Meg McDonald who kept her to just 5 touches in the first half, and I think she finished the game with 13 and just 1 clearance, did Jazz Garner. Do you think they make the same move again?
I suspect they'll start with this arrangement. They've lost the element of surprise, obviously, although Meg was starting to build a bit of a name for herself as a tagger before this game.
Yep.
And, you know, if things start to get a little bit out of hand, if Jazz starts to get off the chain, then they may just look back to reverting to a more traditional midfield structure.
Brie, I'm sure you've been tagged a number of times before. How do you break a tag? If you're Jazz Garner, what do you need to do, and what do her teammates need to do?
Yeah, look, I guess there's so many ways to answer this question, but I think the first thing you want to do is look at the tagger's strengths. So when you line up against them, okay, are they fast? Are they strong? Are they both? And then sort of working from that, that's your first sort of starting point. So if you've got someone who's got a bit of a tank but doesn't like to get into the wrestle, get into the wrestle with them and make it hard for them physically. Yep. But if you've got a tagger that's strong, then maybe you want to try and outrun them or just get away from them where you can. And there's little tactics like, you know, go and stand on the mark if there's a mark taken so that they have to run off you. They can't actually stay with you. So things like that. And then coaching moves, maybe move, for example, a Jazzy, maybe you move her forward and maybe she shakes the tag that way. And then from teammates' perspective, it's just trying to make the tagger's life hard. So every time they run past you, give them a little bump, make it hard for them to keep sort of tagging, you know, whoever they're tagging. So many ways to answer that question, but you got to sort of think through it.
Ah, that was good insight.
And I did notice as the game progressed, particularly after half-time when Jazz started to get going, the Roos girls were starting to get into Meg McDonald, and they'll be aware of it from the start now, so things may be a little bit different.
What about the Roos, Sarah? Like, do they look at putting some time into someone or target? They don't traditionally tag anyone, but Ellie McKenzie was so influential, even more so than Monconti, which we thought was going to be that Monconti-Jazz Garner head-to-head battle, but Ellie was just on fire in that draw. Do they need to put some time into her?
The trick with Ellie is that there's not many who can physically go with her. She's tall and she's quick. And possibly the person who's best suited to playing on her is Jazz Garner, but, you know, why would you waste Jazz in a tagging role? So I suspect they're just going to let them go head-to-head. They might be a bit more wary of her around the stoppage. She found a lot of room in that regard a couple of weeks ago. So just maybe putting a bit of an eye on that, you know, but backing your own midfielders.
Well, finally, before we wrap up today, the All-Australian squad of 42 was released on Tuesday. The final 21 will be announced at the W Awards in Grand Final week. The Lions had the most nominations. They had 6 players represented. Adelaide, Melbourne, the Cats, Tigers had 4 each. 3 Pies, in fact, Brie, named in the All-Australian squad, which was nice. And Sarah, you can't really talk about the squad because you are a selector, and it's fair to say it's probably a job that none of us envy you having, because you can never make everyone happy when it comes to the All-Australian squad. And just scrolling through some of the comments, there's a lot of so-and-so was robbed, this person was robbed. From your perspective, though, how challenging is this job?
In those comments, there was also a curious absence of this person. You know, I want this girl included, and I want who comes out.
Yeah,
exactly. Everyone can be a selector if you're picking 100 players. It's incredibly tough. This year in particular, you know, we had 18 sides for the first time, so the amount of players has has increased and dramatically. You know, there's only a sample size of 10 rounds as well. In the men's, they have 21, 22 games to play with and sort of separate each other out. And then, of course, you get into structural questions and philosophical questions, you know, like how many rucks do we include, how many forwards? You know, is a player maybe structurally important to a side, but are they in the best midfielders, say, in the competition? you know, it's a long debate. It's enjoyable to a point.
Well, Bree and I just want to dig the boots in a little bit more. So we've each picked someone who is unlucky to miss the squad. Bree, you can start us off.
Yeah, so sorry, Seth.
Are you going to say who's coming out?
Yeah,
no, I don't think so.
Just who's unlucky. My pick was Tyler Hanks. Throughout the years, I just think she's been such a pivotal part of the Melbourne team, and she's one of those players I reckon is really structurally sound and really helps the Melbourne team set up. And she helps those midfielders get off the chain, like your West and Liv, who run through there. So that's one answer, but also just her touches. They're so efficient. She might not always have the most touches, but she's very efficient and impactful with the ones she does get.
And Gemma Bastiani wrote an article which you can read on women's.afl and the AFLW app just about how Tyler was probably, I guess, underrated in turning around that game on Friday night against the Crows for the D's, and the influence and the impact that she has that we might not be able to see. So make sure you give that a read. For mine, it's another Demon, and it's Libby Birch, who is probably the general in the competition's stingiest defence, which is, of course, the D's. She's second in the competition when it comes to intercepts, but she was an All-Australian last season, and she's actually having a statistically better season this year. And of the players to register 75 intercepts or more this season, she's had the second most metres gains, inside 50s disposals and tackles as well, those stats thanks to the lovely Gemma Bastiani. But I would probably, if I had to pick one to come out, Sarah, Meg McDonald and replace with Libby Birch. But that's just my take, and you did a brilliant job after we've just stuck the boots in.
No comment. And it's a panel decision.
Well played, Sarah. And that is all we have time for on the W Show. Bree, thank you so much for joining us. As a thank you, we have a Blakeaway voucher for you. They are a valued NAB customer and make incredible ready-made meals, which are all in my freezer and fridge. So please enjoy, and best of luck, of course, to you and your pies on Saturday.
Perfect. Thank you, Nat, and thank you, Seth, for having me on.
Sarah, best of luck, of course, to you. Hope you don't have too much of a hard time writing a match report. What game are you covering this week?
Richmond, North Melbourne.
Oh,
so
very nice.
hopefully the Tigers get up.
Right, try and be neutral. I will see you there, of course, at Punt Road Oval. There'll be a live site at Yarra Park as well. If you can't get in, there'll be food trucks and galore. So make sure you get out there. Enjoy some finals this weekend, and women's.afl and the AFLW app, of course, are the place to go for your tickets and, of course, all your footy news. We'll catch you again next week.